GM. GM. So, I want to talk about today a question I got from one of my captains a while back. And he said this. He said, we all want to get rich. But what's the difference between becoming a miserable person in the process, but at the same time not needing to be happy all the time while grinding? Where do you draw the line and make sure not to become a miserable piece of shit, as he says exactly? So, I think I have the benefit of being a bit older than most of you. And the more you go through life, the more you realize that what you're doing along the way doesn't really matter. And I'll try and explain this in the best way I can. If you're in this campus and you're listening to this and you're in your 30s or in your 40s, you're going to understand this 100%. So if that's you, remember when you're in your 20s or you're in your teens, right? So if you're 15, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, whatever, you really think that everything that happens matters. Like you think everything feels like make or break. And that's usually what fucks people up. It fucked me up for a long time. I've always been extremely good at making money. But until I was in my mid-20s, I was terrible at keeping money. Right? Could make money no problem, but I would just it would just disappear. I would spend it. I would start a business. It would fail. I would throw money into something. I would travel. I would do whatever. It was just like, I always had the backup. I always had the fallback of, I know how to make loads of money. But I never knew how to build wealth. And I used to think that was just, I'm young. It doesn't matter. You're young. You can spend it. You're young. You can make it back. But I realized that it was actually because I didn't know. I didn't understand that life is a long-term game. And that I know it's a bit of a cliche. And it actually is a Bill Gates quote, which is hilarious that I'm quoting Bill Gates when he's like one of the worst human beings on the planet. But this is objectively true. Bill Gates, when he was just Microsoft, when he wasn't trying to force feed you soy meal and fucking crickets, whenever he was just Mr. Microsoft, he said something that is very, very true. He said, we overestimate humans, we overestimate what we can do in a year, and we underestimate what we can do in 10 years. Something like that. I don't know if it's a year and 10 years, whatever. It's like, basically, the gist of it is, we vastly overestimate what we can do in the short term, and we greatly underestimate what we can do in the long term. And if I could just say this one sentence and then end the lesson, I would. I would say that if you are young or old, doesn't matter what age you are, but the older guys, you should know this. And if you don't, well, this is something I learned far too late, but it seems like those who do. If you're in your teens or your early 20s, I truly want you to listen to me. If you just decide that whatever you want right now, okay, and I guarantee you that whatever you want right now, your goals, if you take that number, because it's always a number, right? You want to be a millionaire, you want to make 10 million, you want to make 5 million, you want to make even 100 grand, whatever, it depends where you're starting from. Whatever it is that you want to make, however much money it is, or whatever success you want to have, if you just take that exact same thing and extend the time frame by 2 years, you will actually do it. The problem when you're younger is you don't have the perception of time. And when I say younger, I don't mean really in age. I mean you're less mature. Some people are super mature at 22. Some people don't really get mature until they're 28 or 30. It's different for every person, right? Depends how much life has fucking beaten you over the head. But it's so fucking true that if you try and speed run your way to $1 million in a year, you're just not going to do it, right? You might do it, and I've met at least, Like, remember, I'm in the war room. I've got a good network. I've got a really good network. Incredible network. I have met more teen and early 20s millionaires than probably anybody in the camp. Like, none of you have met as many millionaires as I have at the young age, right? And the vast majority of them, like more than 50% of them, don't have that money anymore. Life is not about making $1 million. It's about keeping it. Because it doesn't matter who you are or where you are, $1 million in the modern world will not get you through life. It won't. You, like maybe if you live in India or Philippines or a third world country, maybe. But don't forget that India is the fastest developing nation on the planet. So just like China 20 years ago was a poor country, China now has a middle class. Being a millionaire in China is not that impressive anymore. It used to be. But as these countries develop, if you think that, like, oh yeah, fucking I'm balling, I've got $1 million in India, but in 20 years, that's not going to be anything. This is fiat currency we're talking about. If you denominate your wealth in fiat currency, you're forgetting, or at least you should not forget, that it is being debased every day, every week, every month. And when I was growing up, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, $1 million was a lot of money. Like $1 million was a lot. Like that was big money. You could do so much. Now, don't get me wrong. If anyone gets handed $1 million, that's loads of money. But it doesn't mean you can stop working. It doesn't mean you're set for life. It means you've probably got 10 years of runway. But if you're 23, 10 years of runway is not your life. So, if you accept that as fact, which undeniably it's fact, then don't you think that you should plan for the long term? And I want you to really think more about, how do I live a life that is sustainable and gets better every single year for the rest of my life? And the way I've realized to do that myself personally is to not lose. You want to take as few losses as possible. And this is not talking about trading. I mean in life in general. Everything is risk reward. Everything is expected value. Everything is a trade. You're either trading your time or your money. In everything you do, you go to a job. You are trading your time for a salary. You go into the market. You are trading your money for more money. But of course, if you're wrong, you lose money. If you waste time in your job, you lose time. No, your boss isn't going to come and take money out of your pocket, but he is going to steal your precious time. And you're going to know this as you get older. Nothing is more important than your time. Again, another cliche, but you ask any billionaire on earth, would he give away his fortune at 80 years old to go back to being 30? Every single one of them would say yes. Because you can always make more money. You can't get more time back. And this leads back to the question that I started with, which is, what's the difference, or how is there a difference between becoming miserable in the process and at the same time not needing to be happy all the time while grinding? Like, where do you draw the line? How do you make sure not to become a miserable piece of shit? I think that too many people are focused on the process, like not the process in the right way. Too many people are focusing on the carrot rather than the stick. Right? So the carrot, you've heard the analogy of the carrot and the stick. If there's a stick and there's a carrot in front of you, you're going to be chasing it. But the whole idea of that is that you can't catch the carrot because someone's holding the stick and it's always in front of you. Now, I think that it's really important that you spend far more time reflecting and thinking about what life you want to live and who you want to be as a person the whole way through. It's not it doesn't matter what you do. If you woke up tomorrow and you had $1 million, what would you do? Like, would you do anything different? For most people, you wouldn't do anything different. You should spend more time critically thinking. This is one of the biggest learns that I've had over the years, right? You should think more and act less. Think more, act less. A lot of, just getting stuck into the mindset of work in whatever form that is, that's okay, but you should really think about what you want to do along the way. And the whole thing about becoming miserable, it doesn't make sense. If you look at the most successful people, look at Tate, for example. Tate talks often about never being happy, in air quotes, right? He's not sitting around like trying to chase happiness. He's trying to chase achievement, chase success. And people look at him and say, oh, you're never going to be happy, you're never fulfilled. But then, if you're not working, if you're doing nothing, if you're being a lazy cunt, you just feel like shit. Right? I think a lot of times people feel like work is somehow taking away from their happiness. And I'll be honest, I've never truly understood that, because I've always really, really, really felt like my purpose was to work. I can only speak as a man. I know it's not just men, and it's predominantly men in the campus, but there are some ladies as well. But I speak as a man, right? And I've always felt that the purpose of a man is to work and to provide and then build a legacy, have children, have a family, pass it on to his future generations, right? And it just doesn't feel it, even when work is super stressful and I've got a million things going on and I've got a fucking trade that's losing bad and I have to try and control that trade. And then I've also got a million questions in the campus. And then I've got personal things going on with my family who want my attention and my time. It never makes me think, I wish I wasn't doing this. It just does. I never think that. Because anytime I get a moment and I have downtime and then I think, what am I doing? Like, as soon as I sit still for a few hours, I'm like, this is boring. The only time I can stop, like tonight, I went out for dinner with some friends. Loved it. Sick. Loved every minute of it. Being with the boys, having food, smoking some cigars, talking shit. I enjoy that so much. But that's only because it's like a rare distraction. If I'm ever sitting during the day and I find myself in between tasks, I'm just bored. And I don't know if it's just me, but I know it's not just me, because I speak to my captains a lot. I speak to Adam and Sillard. I speak to my network. And I was like, most guys I know are like this, at least successful ones, where as soon as you're sitting still for too long, you're just restless. And you should be restless, because I think the purpose, like the meaning of life, is to always have another mountain to climb. And so I find it really hard to answer the question of how do you not become like miserable when you're working and not get stuck in the work. I think you're just framing it wrong. Why does it ever have to be miserable? Why do you ever have to feel like it's a burden to work? Like grinding, this whole term of grinding. Why is that a bad thing? Why is there a negative connotation around the word grinding and to be hustling and to be working really hard? The happiness you should feel as you're grinding is not while you're doing it, it's after you've done it. And this is why it's important to delete your social media. This is why it's important to not smoke and drink too much. This is why it's not important to not eat sugary foods. All these dopamine traps, scrolling on TikTok, burning your brain on Netflix, playing video games, they steal your energy. If you cut all that shit out and then you work really hard, guys, this is the other thing. So many guys ask me, like, how much do you sleep? I sleep 8 hours a night every fucking night. Sometimes I'll sleep 6 or 7 if I'm super busy. Almost every night I sleep 8 hours. I went to bed last night at 3:30 a.m. because I stayed up, had to trade after the Daily Open. And I woke up at like 11. 7.5 hours. But people look, I get this comment more than anything. People think I'm online all the time. But I'm not. I sleep 8 hours. But the microsecond I wake up till the microsecond I go to sleep, as I record this at fucking 1 a.m., I'm working. But I don't neglect my sleep. And I wake up every day full of energy. It's little things like that. It's like people try to take the shortcuts the wrong way. They're like, instead of working more when they're awake, they want to sleep less, thinking that more hours awake equals more work. It doesn't. That's totally backwards. And I used to feel that way, right? I've made that mistake in the past. So I'm not here on my high horse. I've done that shit in the past, but it's not the way. And so if I can like summarize this into an answer, how do you not become a miserable piece of shit? I think it's not going to come from something I say. It's not going to come from me saying, oh, look, just do this, this, and this, and here's the 3-step process. But what helped me was, it was time for me. It was many years. It was years of hating what I was doing. Even though I loved it, I also hated it. It's this weird thing. I used to work in sales. I was the best in my company. I made loads of money. But it was a fucking grind. It was a slog every day. Up early. Home late, on the road, meetings, constant stress of where's your money coming from? Like my manager saying, where's your money? Like, where's your billings? How much are you making this month? How much? Give me your projection. And then when you give the projection, end of the month, is it, did you make it? Like, where's your billings? When are you billing it? When are you billing it? But then anytime I would have a week off, I'd be like, fuck, I miss it. And that was where it clicked for me. And what I realized was, you don't have to enjoy it while you're doing it. But if you finish it and you take some time off, and you're like, I miss it, then you're doing the right thing. And so I think the secret, the trick, the hack, whatever, if there is one, is to get to a place like that, where you understand that even though what you're doing is difficult and stressful and tiring, and sometimes you have doubt and you have anxiety and you feel like you're not progressing, whatever, but when you stop, you're like, fuck, what am I doing? I need to get back to work. That's when you know that you're doing the right thing. And that at that point, I think you should be able to understand yourself, that you don't need to be miserable. Like, you don't need to be a miserable person when you realize that this is actually what I'm meant to do. And this is what I should be doing. But just like my captain said when he asked me, it does not mean you have to be happy. Happiness has nothing to do with productivity. Some of the most productive people on the planet are the least happy. Some of the happiest people on the planet are the least productive. Those two things are mutually exclusive. They do not go together. It's okay to do what you need to do and not feel happy. But you know when you will feel happy? When you finish, you lay your head down at night and you're like, I got 1% better today. Tomorrow we go again.